Howdy mates, good afternoon. How are we all doing? Here's a part 3 video over at the Lemon Bay Environmental Park. Right now we're in the southern portion of the preserve. So now we're right next to the Lemon Bay, as you can see just past the canopy. So in a sense, Lemon Bay actually is quite a neat park. You know, as you have the opportunity to see a piece of the inland and then, of course, towards the water, right? So, yeah, we essentially, where we're walking is kind of like a mangrove swamp trail where you have a chance to see a bit of the red and black mangroves here. Not like to my left, for instance, where you're seeing all those projections coming out of the ground. As I've mentioned before, that's your classic example of pneumatophores, which is essentially the black mangrove's way of obtaining nutrients and whatever water it needs from above, because most of their root system is established underground. So in a sense, those pneumatophores that I'm discussing act as they kind of act as a snorkel, you could say. It's their way of obtaining air. Yeah. And oftentimes, another good way to know if you're looking at a black mangrove, for instance, is to look at its bark. Some people have actually made remarks that the bark actually looks like it was burned recently. However, though, that's not the case, even though it looks like it could be. The black mangrove is actually named based on its bark because, as you can see, it's quite dark. So it's what you call very befitting for the name. And trying to look for a good sample of leaves. Yeah, there you are. That's the leaves. They're typically in bundles of 4, and usually the underside has more of like a kind of like an olive green appearance, and that is usually where the salt is excreted. So I like to think of black mangroves as the sweating mangroves, just because we do a very similar thing when we sweat. We tend to excrete salt. So they initially take it in, and then usually if there's some form of evaporation and the mangrove has used whatever water it needs, it will create salt as a byproduct. And then, of course, we've got our famous sea grapes. Now, we are past the time of the year as to where we will actually see, a little play on words, actually see the grapes. And they're just so named because they highly resemble our typical table grapes that we consume. But here's something interesting. After working in produce for many years, what's actually fascinating is, you know, a lot of us like our typical seedless table grapes. Did you know that naturally there's really no such thing as a seedless grape? Because if you get like a natural table grape that hasn't been modified in some way, you'll notice that it has like a hard seed in the center, no different than these sea grapes. So when we get seedless table grapes that has been modified in some way as to where we yield a result that we desire, which is to not have the seeds. Or if there is, they're very, very, very small as to where you can't really sense it that much. So that's another fascinating topic I've learned over the years. You could say, in a sense, it's just a fancy way of saying genetic modification. It's quite amazing what we can do with genetics, but at the same time, it can actually be quite of a dangerous game, too. So yeah, here we go. Here's the example that I was talking about of the black mangrove here. It has an olive green underside. Yeah, same thing. Even over here, the bay is very low. Like I said, I've never seen it this low before. This is crazy. And actually, to my right, or should I say right in front of me, we have a classic example of, I believe, this is a white mangrove right here. White mangroves tend to have leaves that are usually a bit more rounded, as you can see here, or a bit more oval-like. So it's actually quite surprising to see a white mangrove right next to the bay, because that doesn't happen very often. White mangroves typically prefer to have a little bit of drier soil, so it's a little odd to see it out here. But that's the thing. You never always know what nature is up to. So, alright. Well, I'm actually nearing 7 minutes, so I think this is a good place to wrap up, or a good time to wrap up. So, alright, you guys. Hope you enjoyed watching this video, and watch my 2 other videos that I made earlier. Because I know some of you, when I make a couple of videos in one day, you may only see just one that I've made. But I usually make more than one each day I go out on my excursion. So don't be afraid. You know, if you want to see more of my stuff, just scroll through. It doesn't take that long. So thank you guys for your support, and as always, feedback is welcomed. So alright, you guys, take care, and Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.